Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Hi, good morning.
Anyone?
Hi, good evening.
Good evening, everyone. How are we all doing today?
Good evening. Very fine, thank you.
I hope we have people logged in for this session. Okay, let's start. And I want to believe people will join us in the course of the webinar. So, my name is Yewande Redemi. I am the legal officer at Upper Life Group Nigeria Limited. So this evening at this webinar, we're going to be discussing the topic understanding land titles and land documents. Understanding land titles and land documents. So before I start, I think I should differentiate between what is a land title and what is a land document. So land titles are those documents that shows a person's right of ownership on a land or property. It's those documents that shows that this person has the right to either transfer this property to a third party. Now, land document is what is issued to a buyer from the seller. So now these are the two things. For a seller to sell a property, he has to have his land titles on those properties. So after sale, what he gives to the buyer is called the land document. So I'm going to be taking us through different land titles and different land documents. But I want us to know that the first important thing to note is that under the land use act, all land in a state are vested in the government, the governor of that state. Basically, any state that you have decided at the moment, all the lands in that state are vested in the hands of the governor. So let's say the governor is the overall owner or landlord of all the lands in that state. So now I'm going to taking us through the different land titles that we have. Then we'll take us through the land documents also. So first of all, for one of the land titles that we have in Lagos, I'm going to be using Lagos as my case study for this webinar. So for land type, for an example of a land title in Lagos is free or under government acquisition. So let's say you want to buy a property from the family, and you ask them that, okay, this family, what title do you have on this? And they tell you it's freehold or government acquisition. What that freehold basically means is that the land is free. That this government has not indicated any kind of interest on that land as at that time. The land belongs to the family, but government has not shown that they want to either come to this land for one thing or the other. So that's a freehold land. Now, a government acquisition land is a land that government has shown interest that maybe in another 10, 15 years we would come to do something on this land. So those two types of title are titles that I won't say they are 100% okay, because when you get it, the government can come in another 5, 10, 15 years to demolish houses that have been built or chase people out. So what you should do when you acquire a freehold land or a government acquisition land is to do the proper regularization to the government. Once you've done that, you won't have any issues on those lands. But once land is just freehold and government acquisition, rest assured that in some years to come, the government can come and take over those lands. So we'll go now to committed or global acquisition. Now, the first that we discussed was freehold or government acquisition, that they are the lands that belong to government that they've not shown interest on. Now, committed acquisition is the government has shown interest on this particular land and that they have marked out a purpose for that land. Let's say, for instance, the land that government is building the airport somewhere around that eventually. Now, that land some years ago was a committed land because government had shown interest in that land and they had planned on it that eventually they're going to build an airport on it or probably a school. So those are committed acquisition lands. Government have shown interest and they have given a purpose for that land. Now, global acquisition is a land that government has shown interest in it, but they've not aligned a purpose. They've not pinned down what exactly they want to do on that land. That is a government. That's a global acquisition. Now, in this kind of title too, it is mandatory if you don't want to have any issues with the government later on to regularize with the government. Now, the third type of title that we have in Lagos is excision and garnishment. Now, excision. Remember that the last point that we did for global acquisition, whereby the government has shown interest, but they have not given a purpose. Now, this kind of land, government can now give to an individual or a family. Now, when the government gives an individual, a family, that land that was global acquisition, which they had no purpose for, that title that's given to that family now becomes what they call excision. Now, that is a good title because government has said that, okay, this land, we don't know what we want to do, but we want to give it to you to either build any corporate entity or residential purposes. Now you can go ahead. That is a good title. Now, when this person who the government has given this land to now goes further to make sure that exception is published in the government gazette. Now, that gazette is called gazette. So, which is also a good title. So, excision is government has given you, but you have not gone to publish it. That excision. Gazette is you have published the excision, which now becomes the gazette. So I hope we are getting these points that I'm laying down. We have discussed 3 types of land titles. We have talked about freehold or government acquisition. We have talked about committed or global acquisition. And we have also talked about excision or gazette. Now we want to go to the popular one that almost every Nigerian knows, which is called the certificate of occupancy, otherwise known as C of O. Now, this C of O is like the almighty all document. Now, this C of O is a document that is issued to you by the government of that state, saying that we legally give you this land. So that is very exciting. And now, for you to get this C of O, you have to go through the proper process of going to the land registry to apply for it. So now, let's say you have acquired a freehold land. So now this is where the regularization that I've discussed in freehold, global acquisition, this is where it comes to place. Now, where you have bought a freehold land that you know that okay, government can come in years to come and demolish or chase you out. Now, the proper thing to do is to apply for this C of O. Now, when you apply for this C of O, government will see in their map that okay, that land was freehold, and now that you have come to apply for C of O, once they approve it and they grant that C of O, that land becomes just automatically. So with that title, you can transfer to someone else. So C of O is a legal permission from a government to an individual or to a corporate entity that this land belongs to you and you can do whatever you want with it. And it is usually for a term of 99 years. So that is certificate of occupancy, or otherwise known as C of O. Now the following one is governor's consent. Now I would give a scenario for us to be able to understand this governor's consent. Now let's say somebody that has purchased the land and has acquired a C of O in that land and now transfers to another third party. Now, what this third party needs to do after all documents have been transferred to him is to make sure he or she gets a governor's consent. Now, for every deed of assignment that is prepared, at the last stage, there's usually this column that says, I hereby approve this transaction, Governor of Lagos State, and all that at the last stage. Now, when you have gotten your deed of assignment and you go to register it at the land of registry and you make your necessary payment for that governor's consent, the governor of that at that time will attest to that contract, which now states that the government is aware that this land has been transferred from so person to another person. So that's also a good title. So then another one is registered deed of assignment. We all know deed of assignment. So now that deed of assignment that you have gotten consent for, when it is registered with the land registry, it's registered deed of assignment. Sorry, please can someone put up can you mute? I'm hearing voices on the ground. Okay, thank you. I think the person has done that. Thank you very much. So this evening we have discussed land titles. We started with freehold or government acquisition. We went ahead to discuss committed or global acquisition, followed by acquisition of gazette. We have discussed the C of O. We have discussed governor's consent. We have discussed deed of assignment. So now, what the next one to discuss now is the letter of administration. Now, letter of administration is a document that is given by the probate of every state courthouse. Now, let's say the owner of a property dies, but unfortunately, he did not prepare a will. And let's say he has a lot of property, but maybe in one way or the other, he didn't prepare a will and died. Now, what the family is supposed to do is to apply to the state high court for letter of administration. Because at the point where that person died without a will, that those properties belong to no one in per se until they have gotten a letter of administration. Now, after that administration has been gotten, those administrators, because administrators will be chosen and they'll be gotten letter of administration. These administrators can now use this letter of administration to sell whichever property is in the name of that deceased person. So when someone comes here and say, I want to sell this land, I ask, what title do you have on this land? I say they have letter of administration. It's a good title, which means that probably the person that owns it died, did not prepare a will before he died, but the families had gone ahead to do the proper thing by applying for letter of administration. Now, there's an hierarchy for application of letter of administration, but today is not for that. Today we're only discussing land titles and land documents. So the next one to discuss now is grant of probate. Now, the difference between grant of probate and letter of administration is in grant of probate, the deceased died but prepared a will, unlike letters of administration. Now, when the deceased died and prepared a will, in the will he has appointed some executors. Now, these executors with the will that was prepared by the deceased will take same to the state high court, to the probate office at the state high court to register that will. Upon registering that will, they are given a grant of probate. Now, with this grant of probate, they can sell any of the deceased properties. Now, there are two instances to this, which leads us to the next title that we are going to be discussing, which is deed of assent. Now, let's say a deceased person dies and he has prepared a will. In his will, he has highlighted the executors and his beneficiaries. Beneficiaries are people that he has willed one thing or the other to. Executors are those that are to manage the estate. Now, let's say Mr. A dies and he gives his child, Mr. C, his property in Ikoyi. Now, before Mr. C has a good title on that property for him to sell, the executors have to prepare for him a deed of assent. Now, with that deed of assent, they have transferred their rights to him for him to be able to transfer to any other third party. So when somebody comes and shows that, okay, I have a deed of assent on this land, automatically you're supposed to know that the person, probably the person's dad, mom, uncle, or relative died and willed that property to him, to which he was given a deed of assent. Now, this is also a good title. When somebody says, what I have on this land is a deed of assent, you should know that the person has the right to either transfer to any other person. Then another one is deed of mortgage. Now, deed of mortgage. For a deed of mortgage to be prepared, it's usually between a borrower and a lender. The borrower can be a bank and it can be an individual lender. So let's say somebody goes to borrow money from a bank now, and you are giving your house as a collateral for that loan. Now, among the documents you will issue to the bank before the bank can transfer that loan to you is a deed of mortgage. And this deed of mortgage is like a temporary document to say that in any case, if I'm eventually able to pay off my debt, you will give me back the deed of assignment. But in the event that the borrower is unable to pay up the loan, that deed of mortgage already transfers the title of that borrower to the bank, to the lender, or whoever the lender, be it the bank, be it an individual lender. So with that deed of mortgage, the bank or that individual lender can also transfer title to another person. That's a deed of mortgage. Another land title is court judgment. As the name implies, judgment that is given by the court on a piece of land. So let's say two people or two families are dragging a land, that claiming ownership on the land. Now both of them have taken themselves to court. And after all court trial, court proceedings, the court now gives a judgment that Mr. A has the right, is the rightful owner of that land. Now, with that court judgment is a good title for Mr. A to be able to sell that land to any other person. Do you all understand? Then the last land title we'll discuss before we go to land document is deed of gift. Deed of gift, as the name implies, is a gift that is given to someone. So let's say I want to give someone a property in Ikoyi, my property in Ikoyi. So since I'm not selling, what I'm giving to that person is a deed of gift. So once that person has that deed of gift, he can in turn sell that land to someone else. So that deed of gift becomes a good title for you to transfer your right to another person. So I want to go again on the different land titles that we have. Initially, I stated that land titles and land documents are two different documents. Land titles are the documents to show that you have a right of ownership on that land. Land documents are what the seller gives to the buyer after a purchase of a land or a property. And we have discussed freehold or under government acquisition. Freehold has said that the land is free. Government has not shown any interest on the land. Government acquisition land is the land that government has shown interest on. Those I wouldn't say they are good titles, but they are not 100% good titles, because when you acquire a land on freehold or government acquisition, you should regularize the government. Then we also discuss committed land or global acquisition. Committed lands are lands that government have shown interest and they have marked out a purpose for it. Be that they want to build a school, they want to build airports, they want to build good construction or so. Global acquisition are lands that are acquired by government, but they have no purpose for it. Now, when they now give this land with no purpose to an individual or a family, that becomes an acquisition. So with that acquisition, you can sell to someone. Now, let's not forget that I stated that this acquisition, you should try as much as possible to register, to publish it in the government gazette, which now becomes a gazette, which becomes a good title for you to sell onto another person. Then we discuss C of O, which is popular. Everybody knows C of O. Once you have a land that is C of O, you can rest assured that nothing can happen to me on this land. But that C of O is issued to you by the government of that state. Except, I don't know what can happen, except the federal government comes, and once the land is not a federal government land, they have no say on it. So once the state government gives you a C of O on the land, you can relax and be sure that this land is mine and you can transfer to somebody else. So when somebody says, I'm selling this piece of land and what I have on it is a C of O, I want to advise that those kinds of land are lands that you should, go into and purchase. Governor's consent. Now, somebody has applied for a C of O on a land and sells to another person. That land has been marked in the name of that person that applied for the C of O. So, someone that purchased from that person, all the person needs to do is to get a governor's consent. So once you have a governor's consent, it means that the government has consented to the fact that the person that initially has the C of O has sold to you. Registered deed of assignment. After you buy a property from someone and the person issues you a deed of assignment, it's required that you register that deed of assignment with the government. So with that deed of assignment, that you get the governor's consent. Also, we discussed letter of administration, where somebody dies without a will but has properties. Now, what the families should do is to apply for, until they apply for letter of administration, they will not be able to validly sell any other person's land. So once they've applied for letter of administration, with that document, they have right of ownership to sell to a third party. Then we also discuss grants of probate. So unlike letter of administration, grants of probate is when somebody dies with a will. Now in this will, you have picked your executors and you have picked who and who you want to give your properties or your lands to. Now with that grant of probate, the executors may. Now I want to highlight that may because let's say the deceased has no children at all, has no beneficiary, but only executors, and he says, okay, this and probably I want you guys to give these properties to the motherless baby's home or something. Without grant of probate, those executors now have a right of ownership to transfer that property to whoever the deceased has.
Sorry, Madam Yewande, can you hold on, please?
Okay.
Please, who is Chiamaka? Please mute yourself. Hello? Okay, so you can continue, ma.
All right, thank you very much. So, grant of probate, the deceased died and prepared a will. Now, whereby the deceased has listed out beneficiary, let's say my house in number so in Ukwe should go to my wife or should go to my first son. Now, before that wife that automatically has that property now can sell to a third party, she needs to have a deed of assent. Now, for her to have a deed of assent, the executors in that will would prepare a deed of assent transferring that property to her. So with that deed of assent, she can now sell to any other person that she wants to sell to. So with that deed of assent, it's a good title to transfer right of ownership. We also discussed deed of mortgage. Deed of mortgage is a document prepared between a borrower and a lender. Now, a borrower is coming to a lender to borrow him some money. Okay, and is giving a collateral, probably a property or a land. Now, for him to give that property to the borrower, a deed of mortgage has to be executed. Now, this deed of mortgage is what gives the eventual lender to back that property. Sorry, somebody voice. Can you mute? Can you mute?
Because ordinary person go dey do as if na the federal government work dey for them.
Hello. Okay. I think Mr. Jeremiah, can you please mute? Hello? Okay, let me go ahead. Okay, let me go ahead. Then we discuss government court judgment. A court judgment is a document that's given by the court. Now, where two parties are at legal or at loggerheads on the fact that I own this property over you, and they take themselves to court. What the court gives at the end of that proceeding is a judgment. Now that judgment now states that this piece of land belongs to either the plaintiff that sued or the defendant. Now, any of these parties that eventually judgment is given in his favor can use that court judgment as a good side to sell to another third party. Then we discuss deed of gift. So deed of gift is whereby somebody gives another person a land, gives another person a land. Now, for that person to have a right of ownership on that land, a deed of gift has to be executed in favor of that person. So before we go to land document, I want us to probably unmute and ask whatever questions you have as regards land titles. So I want to take some questions or any observation now before we go to land document. So we can all unmute and ask any questions that we have.
Okay, so one thing I want to ask, is there a land, what's it called, that you can say, this is the best one, or this is the ultimate one to have?
Well, I think the ultimate one to have would be the COO, which is certificate of occupancy. Because every other title, for you to have the governor's for you to have the legal backing of the governor, you still need to register it under C of O. So I would say C of O is the paramount most important land title. Like for instance, let's say two families have an issue on the land, on the land, and went and eventually went to court. Except if there was a C of O on that land before. But let's say there's no C of O. Once that judgment is given, it is mandatory, it is required of whoever the owner or of whoever is the owner to register with the government, thereby applying for a C of O. So with that C of O, that means that the government of that land has given you this land legally. Hello, is that answer okay by you? So is there any other question? Feel free to ask questions. I think this webinar should be interactive. I should not just talking. So let's be free to ask any question. Hello, everyone. Are we still here?
Yes, ma'am, we are.
I'm hearing only one person's voice, Mr. Olamide. And from here, I can see we have 6 participants. So I want everybody to just say hi one by one so that we'll know that we are all here and we are listening.
Hi, we are listening.
Thank you very much. That's Mr. Olabanji. Thank you so much.
Can you use it for the interruption?
Thank you.
Hi, we are listening.
Thank you so much. So I want to believe that we are all.
Please, can you explain freehold again? That's freehold land.
Freehold.
Yes.
Okay, now a freehold land is a land that government has not shown interest on. Basically, it will belong to a particular family, probably those that settled in that land years back. But government has not decided to look into that part of that state. So it's a freehold land. Like I initially said, that all lands in a state are vested in the governor of that state. So let's say every land where everybody is right now at the moment, the governor of the state has the overall right over all lands in Lagos. So a freehold land is a land that the government has not shown any interest at the moment. It doesn't mean that in years to come, they won't show interest. So the best thing for anybody that acquires a freehold land is to regularize with the government. So when you regularize with the government and the government gives you a C of O on that land, then you now have a proper legal title on that land. Do you understand? Hello?
I called earlier, I didn't pick up.
So in the absence of no other questions on land titles, now we are going to land document. Please, can you please mute so that every other person can hear? I think Mr. Favor, you have not muted your voice. Please, can you do that? Oh, that's Mr. Ebenezer. Mr. Ebenezer, please also mute. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. So now we have discussed land titles. We are going to land documents. Now, initially, when I started this webinar, I stated that land titles are ownership, right of ownership on a land. Now, land documents are documents that are given from a seller to a buyer. Now, I'm going to give you the list of those land documents. Now, the most paramount of any land document is deed of assignment. Now, deed of assignment is transferring your right on a property to a third party. Now, Mr. A has a land that he wants to sell. Mr. B wants to buy. Now, upon payment, upon full payment of that land, Mr. A will prepare a deed of assignment. Now, what the deed of assignment means is that I am assigning this land to you, meaning you become owner of this land. That's the deed of assignment. So when you know someone that wants to purchase the land, or probably you want to purchase the land, upon full payment of that land, you should get a deed of assignment, meaning that this deed of assignment, you are now the owner of that land. That's deed of assignment. Now, second land document is a receipt. Now, for you to even get the deed of assignment, you must have fully paid. Now, when you are fully paid, the owner of that land or the families that own that land would. Sorry, this person that your video is on, can you please log out of the video? Can you please put up your video? Okay. So when you purchase the land and you are fully paid, the family or whoever sold the land to you must give you a receipt. That receipt shows that I have paid for this land. So when you buy a land, you are getting a receipt, you are getting a deed of assignment. So those are land documents. Another type of land document is the contract of sale. My contract of sale is like showing an interest in the land. Let's say a land that you want to purchase, but you don't have the full payment, or you don't have the full payment of that land at the moment. So what the seller issues to you is a contract of sale, saying that I'm purchasing this land and I'm probably making an initial deposit of this amount and paying the rest in installment. So that document is called a contract of sale. It's a temporary document given to a buyer from a seller saying, okay, I know you have shown interest on this land and that you have made some payment, which are still going to make further payment. So it's in the event that that person now fully pays for that land, what he now gets the deed of assignment, which I had explained earlier. So that is also another land document. Now, we're going to discuss survey plan. Survey plan is this blue-white sheet that shows the measurement of a land. Now, a land can be 100 acres. In that 100 acres, they have demarcated it for probably per plot or so. So that paper is what is called a survey. It shows the measurement of a land. It can be 300 square meters, it can be 500 square meters and all. So that survey is a document that a seller should give a buyer upon purchase of any property. Then we have allocation letter. Now, allocation letter is, you can't just say someone sold the land to me. That land has to be allocated, like it has to be demarcated. So allocation letter is like giving you a demarcation for the land that you have purchased. So let's say you buy a plot of land from an owner that has acres of land. So when that person cuts out your portion for you, what that person gives to you is an allocation letter stating that I've allocated, it could be plot A, it could be plot B, plot C, or whatsoever the person, or it could be plot 1, 2, 3, 4. So that allocation letter indicates to you the particular portion that has been given to you on that person's land. So that is allocation letter. So those are the land documents that we have. We have mentioned deed of assignment, I've mentioned receipt, I've mentioned survey plan, I've mentioned contract of sale, and I've also mentioned allocation letter. Those are land documents that you should advise your client to get from whoever is selling to them. Because you cannot just buy a land and not get any document. That document shows that this land now becomes to you. Now, when you have all these land documents, you can now register them with the government to now make them your title on that land. Do you understand? For instance, when somebody gives you a deed of assignment, like for instance, a deed of assignment is what you should register with the government to either get a seal of O on a land that does not have seal of O, or governor's consent on a land that already has seal of O on it. Do you all understand? So basically, that is what we have for this webinar. We have discussed land titles, we have discussed land documents. These are important preliminary details that one should have when you want to purchase a land or a property. You should know whether this person that is selling to me has a good title for him or her to sell, because you don't want to purchase a land that maybe eventually somebody else comes to you and says that person did not have the right to sell the land to you, thereby making you lose money on whatever you have purchased. So it is important to make sure you know the title that whoever the buyer has before you purchase any property. Once you know those titles and I've explained to you that those titles can be either free or government acquisition. Now, the family that has freehold can sell to you, but you in the long run should know that you should regularize with the government so that you can have a proper title over that land. Or a family that sells to you a committed or global acquisition, you should regularize with the government for you to be able to have eventual good title on the land. Acquisition, like I said, is a good title. Is a document that is given to an individual or a family from a government saying, though this land is government land, though, but we are giving it to you to build residential purposes, to build corporate or commercial buildings or and all. So when that exhibition is published, it becomes a gazette. Then C of O, as we all know, popular, it is given by the government or by the governor of any state to any individual or corporate entity that applies for it. So that is a very important land title. Letter of administration, someone that dies without a will. The families can apply for letter of administration on the properties that the person has. So with that letter of administration, you can transfer to someone else. That is a good title. Grant of probate, someone dies with a will and has appointed executors. Those executors will now register that will at the state high court. Upon registration of that will, they give them a grant of probate. This grant of probate with it, they can sell any of the deceased property. Now, deed of assent, where the executors have registered the will and they've been given a grant, they would now prepare a deed of assent for any beneficiary in that will, for that beneficiary to have a good title to be able to sell to someone else. Deed of mortgage, where a document between a borrower and a lender. A borrower prepares, executes a deed of mortgage with the lender, stating that, okay, in the event that I can't pay back that loan, that property belongs to you. So if he is really unable to pay back, the lender, with that deed of mortgage, the lender has a good title to be able to transfer to a third party. Deed of gift, a house or a land that is given to somebody as a gift, and you give that person a deed of gift, that deed of gift is a good site for that person to be able to transfer. Probably the person feels that, okay, I don't want that land anymore, I don't stay on it, I want to sell it out. So with that deed of gift, that person can sell that land to a third party. So we then discuss land document. Land document, upon somebody having a good title, for that person to transfer that good title to you, there's some documents he has to prepare for you upon purchase of a land, which I've also discussed: deed of assignment, receipt, contract of sale, survey plan, and allocation letter. So I want everyone to ask one or two questions that you might have on either land title or land document. So I want everybody to come in now to ask questions on land document or land titles.
Good
Thank you
evening.
so much.
Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Yewande. Thank you very much for this session.
Thank you.
Please, I want to be sure if I'm clear on something, and
Okay.
that concerning the COO and the governor's consent.
Okay.
Are you saying that the document? Are you saying that the document, the title on the document, the buyer gets on the COO land? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. Are you saying that the document, like the deed on the land, the deed of assignment given to a buyer on a COO land is a governor's consent?
No. What? Now the difference between COO and government consent. Now somebody that has a landed property has applied to the government, and the governor has given that person COO on that land. Now you realize that in the land registry, that land has been marked for a particular person, and the person has given a COO. Now, if that person sells that land to another person, the third party need not apply for a COO, because upon transferring that land, that initial person has given you that COO that he has on that land. Now, what that third party should do is to get a governor's consent. That governor's consent is consenting to the fact that Mr. A that we know that has this land has transferred it to Mr. O. Do you understand? Like, if we all go through searches at the land registry, there's always an hierarchy of transfer for those that actually register those transfers. So someone has applied for COO and sold to someone. He has given you a deed of assignment. Now, at the last bit of that deed of assignment, there's usually this column that says, I hereby consent to this government, to this transaction. Governor of, can be Lagos State, Ogun State, or so. Now, when you apply for a governor's consent, that last page is stamped. That stamp on that last page is what we call a governor's consent. So there need not be two COOs on a land. One COO, then the other party has a governor's consent.
Okay, so there's a general COO for a land and
for a parcel of land, yes.
Yeah, for a parcel. Then under it, there's governor's consent.
There's governor's consent, yes.
Given to every buyer of that particular.
Given to every buyer upon regularization at the land registry. So you have to apply for that governor's consent and make the necessary payments and all for you to have that governor's consent. So governor's consent and COO are like the two documents that shows that the governor is aware that you are on this land. This land belongs to a particular person.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm clear now.
You're welcome. So do we have any other question?
Yes, Madam Yewande, thank you so much for the exposition. This Ebenezer on the line. Okay.
All right.
I want to ask question on excision. If the excision is not published, what is the
Yes.
disadvantage? Who is publishing it?
Now the thing is,
The
for
second
execution
question
now,
is,
okay.
if I get governor's consent and I sell the land, does the second person need to go and get governor's consent again?
Okay. Now let me start with execution. Now execution is a title that now remember I told you that a global acquisition land is a land that the government has not shown any interest on, and they have transferred it to a family or an individual. That transfer, that process is called what is given to them is that execution. Now with that execution, they can actually sell. They can now publish it, because publishing means you have to make some necessary payment for it to be published in the official gazette. Now, when you publish it, it becomes a gazette. Some actually don't publish it, but if in the event your client or yourself purchases a land that is execution, it's advisable for you to publish. So it doesn't matter whoever publishes it. It can be the initial family owner that publishes it, or when you buy from them, can publish, or both parties can agree that okay, publishing this thing is going to require us so much money. Can we share in percentage on how to pay? Now that is for execution. I hope I've been able to clear your question on that. Now for governor's consent. Now someone sells to you and you have applied for governor's consent. If you apply for governor's consent, that is where the registration of that transfer stops at the governor's office. So whoever you transfer to should also get a governor's consent with the deed of assignment you have given to that person. So the thing is, normally, it's just because that in Lagos or probably in Nigeria, we don't do things properly. For every transfer, the government should know who the property is being transferred to. So let's say you got a governor's consent and you sold to someone, and that person did not get the governor's consent. The government believes that that property still belongs to you. So until that person has applied for governor's consent, it will now show, okay, from family A, it was transferred to Mr. B. Now, Mr. B, after some years, now transferred to Mr. C. So it should go in that order. So being that you apply for governor's consent doesn't stop whoever buys from you subsequently from applying for governor's consent. Have I answered your question, Ebenezer?
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
You're welcome.
I also have a question.
All right.
Hello.
Yes,
Yeah,
I can
it's
hear
a
you.
3-in-1 question. Number one.
Okay.
Number one is how does one confirm that those land titles are what they are? For example, if someone says my land is C of O, how do you as a buyer confirm that it's actually C of O? That's part one. Part two is how do you recognize false documents? Like maybe are there some things you need to look out for, a stamp, a signature, some terms? How do you recognize if a land document is fake? Then number three is there a public directory where someone can, look at the plans for each land so that you don't end up buying a land that maybe the government plans to use to build something in the future? So those are my 3-in-1 question.
Okay, thank you. Now, your third question, the body that you should check is the land registry. So now let's say somebody tells you that he has a land, and what the has on the land is a C of O. That C of O will have a C of O number. Now, with that C of O number, that C of O number is what you take to the Lagos Land Registry at Alausa that we all know, or the registry of whichever state where anybody is. Now, that number is what you take to the land registry to do a search. So once you pay for the search, you can now know if that document is authentic. Because if it in the record of the Lagos State government in the land registry shows that that document is authentic. So to verify your C of O, you need to go to the land registry to check with CFO number. Now, your second question, I'm not sure I can remember that very well. Can you ask the second question again?
So the second question is, how do you recognize counterfeit documents?
Well, counterfeit document is also recognizable at the land registry. Now, let's say the document is not, if someone gives you a document and you go to search and you cannot find any detail of that document anywhere, then you should know that that document is probably not registered or gotten from any other source that is not reliable. For every authentic document, like for instance, now let me say a deed of assignment that somebody wants to use to sell a property. Now, deed of assignment, you need to make sure that parties have signed. Now, after parties have signed, you know that okay, these two people consented for this transaction to take place. So with that, you can also know that it's not a fake document. But the most important one is checking with the land registry. That's why it's important for everyone to always register every purchase at the land registry. So there's going to be a record. Most of the properties that people have issues with the properties that probably they didn't do due diligence on by searching at the land registry. So by that, you don't know who actually owns the particular land. But if you have done your due diligence, you have checked at the land registry, and not even only checking at the land registry, also do your local due diligence on before buying a property. Let's say you want to buy a property from one area, you should be able to verify from one or two people in that area that okay, this family, because it's not every family that has a CFO that will have registered with the government. What they might have is just a deed or a receipt. So you want to verify that okay, these people actually have the right to sell this property. Now, in the case of a family, we should have the Olori who is the head of the family. You should have the secretary, the treasurer, and members. Now, you should make sure that the people selling this property to you are the rightful members of this family. Because let's say somebody else comes to you and sells the land to you, probably the person is just a member and has not taken proper permission from the head of the family. Now, for every transaction between the family and an individual, the head of the family must sanction that transaction, which means that he must sign that document. If he's not a party to that transaction, I can tell you that you have been duped and you might not get your money back. Because by the time the head of the family comes and says that this is a family land, the head of the family must be aware, secretary must be aware, treasurer must be aware, and some members of the family must be aware. So those are due diligence you should know, so that you won't enter into a fake transaction, thereby losing money and time, and of course, eventually, these are things that lead parties to court. Now, in the event whereby you don't want to end up in the courtroom dragging ownership of the land with another person, it is mandatory that you do your due diligence both at the local, at the land registry, and also your local finding. Have I been able to answer your question?
Yes, ma, you have.
Thank you. Do we have any other?
Thank you. I also have a question.
Okay.
And we've had situations where we have land title getting revoked. Why do they get revoked? Why do land titles, why do they get revoked? That's first question. Also, the second question, concerning freehold, like what's the disadvantages and the advantages related to freehold?
Okay. Your first question, why do land get revoked? Now, where you purchase a freehold land and a government acquisition land, or it could even be a land with CFO, and probably you don't.
Sorry,
you don't,
land with CFO, government consent, execution, like I'm talking about that kind of title.
Okay.
Yeah, why do those kind of title? Why do they get revoked?
Now, I told you that C of O land are transferred to an individual for a term of 99 years. So these titles can be revoked whereby your term has been fully utilized on it. Now, let's say another thing you should also realize so that your land, so that it won't be revoked is somebody purchased the land, let's say this year now, and they apply for C of O in another 10 years. Now, upon applying for that C of O, you get 99 years on that land. Now, with that 99 years on that, after the 99th year, that land can be revoked by the government. Do you understand? So, for excision, for governor's consent,
yeah.
you know that if you have excision, you need to get C of O. Now, if you have governor's consent, there's already a C of O on that governor's consent. So, at the 99th term of that C of O, it can be revoked by the government. Meaning that we've given you this time for a particular number of years and you have used it. So, we want to take it back. So, when you are buying a land and the C of O probably dated 1970 something now, and now we are in 2023. If I want to calculate, maybe that's about how many years. So you know that probably you have another few years on that land. So for it not to be revoked, you need to regularize. Now, the thing about revoking is that if you regularize, you will not be revoked. That means the government can extend that term. But when you don't regularize and that 99 years catches up with you, the government can revoke that C of O.
Okay. Thank you. So
okay, and
so to
I
my
think your
next
question
question,
was
the freehold. Yeah, what's
okay,
the advantage and the disadvantage of purchasing a freehold title land?
now free of old land is advantage over it is just that you can buy it at a cheap rate, unlike C of O. Now, a land with C of O, the person must have paid necessary fees for the person to get that C of O. And we all know that to get a C of O in Lagos, it costs a lot. Now, for freehold, the lands are usually quite cheap. Now, that is the advantage. Now, the disadvantage of that freeness is if you don't regularize it, if you don't now make all those payments regularize it, the government can come for it in years to come. I'm sure we have all either heard or seen where a government goes to a particular place and demolishes all the houses that are there. Now we know that some of those people that the houses that have been demolished, government can give them compensation. Some don't get compensation. Now those that get compensation are those that regularize their freehold with the government. Now, government, because that land is already government acquired, just that they don't want to do, it's just there. They've not really known what they want to do on the land. It's just freehold. But when you have regularized, even if they come years to either say, okay, this land that we have shown interest some years ago, we want to now build something that we want people to live. Those that regularized, government compensates them for demolishing their house. So whatever money the government has given, they can either use it to get another building or not. For those that did not regularize, disadvantages is that once government comes and demolishes, you get nothing. So at that point, you are homeless, no land, no property.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm clear.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Do we have any other question?
Hello, I have a question. How long does this regularization take for a session?
For excision is not really a regularization. Excision is probably probably somebody wants to sell a land now, and you have searched on that land, you have seen that government has acquired the land. Land is under government acquisition, but they don't have a purpose for it. Then when you now apply to the government, Mr. Governor, our proposal, we have a proposal. We want to build a school, we want to build a factory, we want to build something on this land. And the government agrees with you. What the government gives to you is that excision. So with that excision, you have indirectly bought from the family, from the government. So there are different processes with the government. This excision is different from C of O. So excision is land by the government. Government has just left there. They don't know what to do with it. And you, as probably an estate developer or an individual, think that on this land we can actually build this. That's why a proposal to Lagos State government describing what you intend to do and how it can be beneficial to the state. With that, the government can give you an excision.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Welcome. So do we have any other question? Any other question? Yes, no, yes, no.
No question, ma.
All right. So I want to conclude by saying that we should always ensure to do due diligence when we are purchasing any land or when you want to advise anyone to buy a property. Let he or she do the proper due diligence before acquiring that land. Make sure that the seller has a good title, and also making sure that you get your land document upon transfer of that title. And at Upper Light Nigeria, we always ensure that we verify all our properties from the government, and we make sure that our documents are registered and legally binding for onward transfer to our client. So I want to thank everyone that has joined this webinar. I want to believe that we have understood or gained one thing or the other in relation to when buying or selling the property. I want to thank you all for giving us time in your little schedule to join this webinar. I want to say thank you to everyone and God bless you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you too.
Thank you.
Thank you.